Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy Mega Meeple!
Greetings and welcome to the Mega Meeple, the show all about gamers and the games that bring them together. This is episode 79, and thank you so much for smashing that download button, listening on this episode. If you'd like to hear all the other episodes that we've had up to now, you go to our website, www.themegameeple.com. All the episodes stream there. You go back and listen to the archives, and over the past, year and a half or so, listen to all of those. You can also follow and like and share and all that other stuff for all of our social media sites. We have the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Instagrams and all kinds of stuff, and that is found on the social media page on the website. There are also links on there if you want to help support the show via Patreon or Pod Pledge. As little as $1 a month or so would really help out. And if you want to give more, there are different tiers. And you get certain levels of rewards and kickbacks and stuff like that, depending on what tier that you select. And that is greatly appreciated. But if you're not able to do that, just listening, sharing the news, spreading the word, telling all your friends about the Mega Meeple, that helps out quite a bit. Word of mouth goes a long, long way. A lot more than what I could do as a one-man operation. So I appreciate that very much. If you haven't already, go over to iTunes and subscribe. And if you feel up to it, put out some of that 5-star loving. Leave us a happy review. That helps out a lot as far as the iTunes algorithms and getting the show up in the news feeds in a sense as far as recommended sites. I saw some stuff coming out on our YouTube channel, so head over there to subscribe and hit that little belly thing or however the hell YouTube is doing it nowadays. And a link to that is also found on the social media page on the website. Alright, now that we got all the logistical crap out of the way, the bulk of this episode is going to be the interview with a Kickstarter that's coming out this week. It's actually coming out the end of January. Also on the YouTube channel, coming out about the time the Kickstarter hits, is I have a preview video of the game. Now, there's been a few things occurring in the board game circles and community here in the past, I'd say week and a half or so, that's shown up on my feed. I am going to reserve comment on any of those things, and I'll probably comment on it next episode, next week or the week after. I'm just I just want to see what happens and what the story is after all the dust settles. So keep. If you've if you're in the board game community, chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have an inkling of what it is that I'm going to be commenting on. But I'm not going to do it on this episode. I was originally, but just as I was sitting down to record this segment, I thought, I'm going to wait. The reaction and response to this stuff is just too new, too fresh. It's too soon, I think, for me to throw in my 2 cents worth. So I'm gonna wait on that once the dust settles, and then I'll comment on it. Well, let's see. The one game that I've managed to play this past week is I got another game of Fireball Island had a friend come over, and we played a game of that. And then later on in the week, got together again, and we threw together Village Attacks, and we played one of the scenarios of that. It's a cool game. It basically very similar to Zombicide, but it kind of flips the whole thing. It's role reversal in a sense, where you are playing the monsters. You're not playing the heroes or the survivors or something like that, trying to kill the zombies or the monsters. No, you play the monsters, and the townsfolk are kind of pissed off that you've kind of corrupted the town and drove property values down, and they're ready to drive you out of the castle here. So they're storming the castle, and you are basically they've taken up their torches and pitchforks and stuff, and they are storming the castle, trying to drive you out of their town because they've just had enough of your crap, and you are basically defending the castle. It's a cool game. A lot of different advanced modes that you could add to it if you want to spice things up. But if I was going to do, and I made this comment to my friend that while we were playing, is like, if I was going to do a review of this game, and I may at some point, down the line, the rule book is pretty scattered. You have to flip through a whole bunch of pages just to get the whole story of a particular mechanic or a particular room or a particular character. They don't have it very concise. Rather than, having everything that you need to know about that particular mechanic or that particular character all wrapped up in one section of the rule book, they have it all kind of scattered out all over throughout, God knows how many pages. So there's a lot of page flipping in order to get the whole story, which is why I made a comment this past weekend of BGG, how I think, BGG is all fine and good. I think, and this is one of those things where it's like hashtag change my mind, unpopular opinion. You see these memes of some guy, some person in a park somewhere with a table set up, and the sign in front of the table has some kind of unorthodox or unpopular opinion, and then it says, change my mind. This is one of those things. Change my mind on this. I think Board Game Geek does a disservice as far as game design. You're a game designer or a creator, and you're going to put a game out there. You pretty much know that there's going to be people out there and users of BGG that's going to put together an FAQ or a player aid or a summary of your rule book or something to just, a more concise summary of your rule book. I would dare say that there may be some designers, but it's bad enough that game designers don't play test their rule books. When you have that forum on BGG, that people are going to, users or players are going to do that work for you in a sense, you really don't have that much of an incentive to play test your rule book or to make sure a rule book is easily put together, laid out, and written in such a way that it's able to be easily understood. So what do you people think? That's the question for this week. Do you think BGG, the aspect of people posting FAQs and summary of rule books, player aids, that really helps players and stuff like that. But what if it's a brand new game? It may be a few weeks or months before a player aid or a summary or something like that may come out for a particular game. Do you think that option really enables game designers to play into and say, hey, so, I don't know, I don't need to make a really good and well understood and well laid out rule book because some player on BGG is going to do that for me. So why should I put in the effort to do that for my game? So what do you think? So sound off in the comments. Change my mind. Tell me where I'm wrong. Let me know what you think. All right, well, let's get on to the interview for this week. This week we have Jeremy Moshe talking about Duels of Cartisora. And along with him, I have Richard McRae, who's he's a returning guest. We had him back on episode 41. Talking about Centrix. We had him with Corey Mikan. Well, this time he joins us this week as the publisher of this particular game. Again, this is a game that's coming out this week on Kickstarter. So let's go to that interview right now, shall we? All right, welcome back to the Mega Meeple. And we got a double bill here going on this episode. Now, first we have a returning guest, and we have from Analog Game Studios. We have Richard McRae. How you doing, Richard?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me here again.
Yes, definitely. Now, if people want to hear somehow the history of Richard with the podcast, we had him on back in episode 41, along with Corey Mikan, if I remember, is that talking about Centrix, which was a successful Kickstarter, and then more in line with your publishing company. In episode 46, I had one of the Bjorn gentlemen on talking about Listed.
Oh yeah,
and
perfect.
So that was another successful Kickstarter. So we also have the designer of a game that we're going to be talking about today, and it's Jeremy Moshe. Jeremy, how you doing?
Hi, good. Thank you very much, Thomas.
I hope I didn't butcher your last name.
No, that was perfect.
Okay, good. I took 2 years in Spanish. I had the opportunity to take French, but I figured it was too hard for me. I'd go the easy route in high school. So, but all right. Now the game we're talking about today, you have a game, Jeremy, called Duels of Cartisora.
That's right.
Now this is a player versus player card game, and you actually have a mode in there where you could go up to 4 players, doing sort of like a tag team type of thing. But we'll talk about that in a bit. But this is Richard was nice enough to send me a prototype copy of the game, and if you go to the Mega Meeple YouTube channel, by the time this episode hits, you'll be able to see the video of the preview of the Kickstarter. Now the Kickstarter is going to be going live at the end of January, and it's going to be going for about a month, about 32 days. But Jeremy, since this is your first time into the Mega Meeple studio here, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us all about how you got into gaming and what kind of games you like to play?
For sure, yeah. So I'm a lifelong gamer of all kinds. I started developing video games actually when I was in my 20s. Working on just small indie games, and I was active in the indie game community. And then recently I started looking at board games and attending board game designer meets, and fell in love with that medium also. So this is going to be my first game that's going to be brought to completion and published, but I got a bunch more down in the pipeline that I'm hoping to bring out.
Now, what was the inspiration of Duels of Cartisora? How did I call this my barroom napkin question, because a lot of good ideas start just little scribbles on a barroom napkin. So what What's your napkin story?
So originally, I'm also into role-playing games, and I saw there was a 2-page RPG contest up, and I decided to make an entry for that. So I whipped up this game, and they turned me away. They said, "This is not an RPG. This is a card game. What are you doing here?" So I took that. I was like, "Okay, well, let's try developing this into a card game." So I worked on it a little bit, put it away for a year or two, and then a friend of mine, Adam Tozer, who was originally helping me out with the project, saw my instructions, my rules, and said, "Hey, this looks really interesting. Can you tell me more about it?" And then we worked together on it a little bit, and from there, I just kept developing, going to board game meets, and working on refining it further. The inspiration for the mechanics actually came from the game War, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. I remember when I was like 12 years old or something, playing the game and thinking, this is a little interesting but kind of boring, and how can I jazz it up a little bit? And I don't know, I guess that was kind of in the back of my mind a lot as I was growing up, because I revived that for this game. So it does inspire from the game of War, but takes it to a completely different direction.
I as I was playing, it was like that's exactly what I was thinking. Was like, okay, it's like, because I remember playing that game when I was a kid too. It's like, you just take for those of you who led a sheltered life, you never played that game. You basically take a regular deck of cards and shuffle them up, split them up between two people, and it's just a quick bam, 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 bam. You flip over to the top card, and whichever card is the bigger value, that's who claims both of those cards. And you just keep going. At least the way I played it as a kid, you just kept going until you totally claim the other person's deck of cards. So when the other person didn't have any cards left to play, he lost the war. So, yeah. But I've heard of different variations on that.
But yeah, there's a lot of variations, and one of the issues with War is that, well, it's debatable if you can even call it a game, right? Because you don't really have any agency. It's just flip a card and compare.
That's pretty much.
But I like the mechanic of like drawing a card at the same time, having hidden, reveal, compare, and all that. So that's the part that I took for this one.
Okay. Now, Richard, you as a publisher of games. If you could tell us about how you found out about Jeremy, and what was the initial meeting like when he came to you with this card game that was not an RPG?
Yeah, it was really interesting. The game itself was just printed black and white on pieces of paper, and then each deck of 12 cards, there was 6 of these, had a fun name, and I picked up Rilka the Gladiator. And we met at a playtesting event at 401 Games the first time. And I was asked, do I want to play this game? I said, sure. And I tried to figure out how this worked. And I won the first round. I do remember that, but that was really the point. The point was that I was fighting with very different tools or capabilities compared to my opponent. And so we were slamming down cards, and I was going, wow. The other guy against me, I can't remember what warrior he was using, but it was a totally different fighter with totally different abilities. And I was amazed at how Jeremy had put together this game where, well, for all intents, they were asymmetrical fighters, but you could figure out yours and figure out the weaknesses of your opponent and then try to take advantage of it and try to win. One of my key questions then, of course, was, well, I mean, maybe one warrior is just better than the other one, and it'll always win. But Jeremy apparently had massive spreadsheets in which he had created, the perfect balance, despite them being asymmetrical when you're fighting against each other. Either warrior can win. A more defensive warrior can win against a more power-like one, and you kind of have to learn the character of the warrior that you've chosen. But once you've mastered that, there's a lot of depth in figuring out then what is it that's going to give my warrior the edge over the opponent. What special powers do I have that's now going to overwhelm them? And when I play them at the right time, and reading your opponent too, how they're playing, it makes it pretty fun, pretty different every time you're playing the game too. Just the two warriors.
Yeah, I worked really hard on making sure that all 6 characters were balanced, all 6 characters were unique, that they have their own fighting styles, and you only have 12 cards in a deck, or 12 cards in a hand, and 7 of them are just basic number cards. So it's basically five opportunities to define a character. I made sure that each of those 5 abilities are thematic and they make sense with the character, make sense with the theme. So you have the rogue that feels like a rogue, the swashbuckler that feels like a swashbuckler, the knight that feels like a bulky defender, and then making sure that all of the matchups are possible, that there's no situation where, oh, I have this character against that character, so I know I'm going to win, or I know I'm going to lose. Yeah, that took some doing.
I could imagine. Now, when you first started designing the game, did you set out to have 6 characters, or did you just start out with 2 and then just kind of add things as things came to mind?
Yeah, so I started with Rilka. She was the first character, and I play tested with her. Not overly, just enough playtests to see, oh, this is a viable game, this is a viable character, and immediately I started looking at other characters I could bring into it. The game relies heavily on different matchups. Having a mirror match is interesting, but having a dynamic asymmetrical match is like 2 or 3 times as interesting.
How long did you work on this thing? As far as I could imagine if you had like 6 characters. At least when you get to the point where you have 6 characters, there's a lot of variants there that you gotta kind of look into.
I went through probably at least 100 iterations without exaggeration. And I tried a lot of different permutations. Once I got the core mechanics down, I played with a number of cards in the deck, which ranged from 10 to 13. I played with ratio of ability cards versus regular cards, which varied from 3 to 5. And now it sits at 4 ability cards plus 1 weakness card. Because like in different playtesting was so important. And I'm so glad that I playtested early and kept going throughout. Because through the playtesting, I saw, there's a lull in action at these certain points. How can I make sure that it stays interesting and engaging? How can I bring extra tension to the game to make sure that it always feels like there's a bit of tension somewhere? Mm-hmm. So things like little extra things like everyone has a boast card or a weakness card, which is worth 2 points to whoever captures it, and it's a low number. That was added in because the low cards aren't so interesting, so that brings a little bit of extra dynamic to the low cards. Okay, let's play the low cards strategically. And then seeing that people starting the game don't really know how to start. Do I start with high cards or low cards or whatever? So adding in a first blood token. So whoever wins the first round gets some bonus points. So there, immediately you're starting the game. You have to start off with a bang. I got to start off with some tension there. And then same thing at the end of the game. After you play all your high cards, what's left in the game. So you got a finisher token at the end of the game. So you have to make sure you save something for the end. So all these little mechanics that were brought about through iterations and playtesting and constant work on the game. Okay.
Now let's talk touch a bit on the artwork. Now Richard was that your doing as far as getting Max Gorgel on board? Is it getting the artwork?
It was not. Jeremy had originally found Max
okay.
Online, yeah, and said he really liked this artist, and he wanted to use him, but we thought, well, we should check around for a lot of other artists. But the trouble was, when I took a look at Max and his stuff, I said, no, we got to go with Max, because he is unbelievable. He's got such a special, unique style, and it matches up beautifully with this particular theme of warriors, because he really gets into it. He loves drawing, creating these characters, and he does it digitally too. That was important because we wanted digital images, but really the unique style, this sort of painterly style, but it's modern as well, and it's totally different from any other board game or any other card game that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've just judging by the two decks that I have for the purpose of my review, I like the artwork and just the. Now, I'm assuming each deck or each character has their own color scheme.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay,
yeah.
And the characters just either the way they're dressed or the weapons that they have, or just the color of their eyes, or whatever. It seems like it's all very it's color coordinated, so it's real easy to see. Okay, this character or this color goes with this character.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fully intentional and designed to just emphasize the fact that they are very different one from the other. And if you take a look at their weapons and where they seem to come from, you'll also see that they're also anachronistic, meaning they come from a different time in the world of one-on-one battle, right? But that's cool. That still works, and the game still is balanced and plays.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I especially like about Max's work is his use of silhouettes. Every character has a unique and recognizable shape. Every character has a unique and recognizable weapon. I'm sure when you see all the art that we've already have and all the art that's going to be finished, you'll be able to look and see, oh, I know exactly who this is. I know exactly what they do just from seeing their silhouette, just from seeing their weapon.
Yes, and even for I guess purposes of sorting out the decks after gameplay into the respective cards, it's like you see the silhouette of that particular character's weapon. Both actually on the back the back of the card and the front, with at least for the numbered cards.
That's right.
All right. Well, let's get into the describe. We talked a little bit about some of the aspects of the game, but this is a really quick game. I think the time is like 5 minutes, if even that much. I think most of the time is going to be spent trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I play? What is my opponent going to play? And it's like, well, there's only so much time somebody's going to spend thinking about that, because there's as the game goes on, those options or possibilities are going to start to become more limited. If Jeremy, if you could tell us what the different mechanics of the game and what the winning conditions are and how it scores out at the end.
Sure. Okay. So the core mechanic is the core game is for 2 players and 2 players only. We do have a 4-player version, house rules, or whatever you want to call it, but it's really optimized for 2 players. So 2 players both have a hand of 12 cards, which makes up your character deck. For every round begins with simultaneous play of a face-down card. And then when both players ready their cards face down, you turn them face up at the same time and compare the cards. Most of the cards are numbered, in which case it's a basic contest if it's 2 numbered cards, and the higher number wins. Unless the numbers are exactly 1 away, in which case the lower number wins. And we call that an undercut, winning with a lower number and under. So that was done to make sure that the highest number, 11, is not ultimately powerful, and you can always win a little bit lower, and that adds a really big dynamic to the game. If the numbers are equal, then it's going to be a tie. The cards are set aside, and the new round begins. And whoever wins the next round will win all the cards in the contested pool, which is where they go when they get tied. And that's the core mechanic. And then you keep playing until you run out of cards. And then at the end of the game, whoever won the most cards counts the number of points plus bonus points from the first blood token or the finisher token or the boast cards. And then whoever has the highest score wins.
Yeah, that's as simple as it is to learn how to do it, and as quick as it is to play. Now, this is one of those games that it's like, this is something that's easily could be played multiple times in succession. It's like, okay, well, we played this, and even if it's like, well, let me try that again. I think I can do that. Or, it's like, all right, well, that was fine. Let me try another character. But you also have here you have an aspect of the game of draft mode where you could.
That's right. Yeah, draft mode is a more official tournament-y style where, because there's 6 decks. It's a way to involve all 6 decks in a one-on-one duel. So it's just drafting your characters, matching them up against each other, thinking about which matches you feel more comfortable with, and going from there.
All right, Rich. Well, I want to bring Richard back in here. Now, Richard, if you could tell us more about Analog Game Studios, is that now the when you and Corey was on the show, was had that been established yet, or is this a relatively new thing?
It was established or being established more or less at the same time, but I was focusing on just getting our game Centrix out first before I started signing game designers and new games. Okay.
So what kind of I guess if there's any games coming down the pipeline that you're able to talk about, because of course you have Centrix, we have Listed.
Well, yeah, I can jump right in here. Sure. We had Gnomes and Midnight that funded through Gnomevember, by the way, and that's both that one, in fact, and Centrix are being loaded onto containers in Hong Kong right this week. So that's super exciting. They're coming soon to our backers. And then going forward, we're doing Duels of Cartisora starting next week. Very excited about that one because it's just a great game. We'll have King of Indecision coming in after that, and that's actually another local designer here in Toronto, Joe Slack. He's published other games. He's also lectured on game design, so he's quite an accomplished game design person in our neighborhood. We have a game called On Point, the ballet board game. Now that one, we thought we'd throw it into a Kickstarter to see what would happen. We got tons of love on social media. Thousands and thousands of people wanted this game, but it didn't translate into a Kickstarter. We kind of figured that because Kickstarter generally is not, thematically oriented towards ballet type stuff. But it's still a very cool game, and the artwork that we're wrapping up now is gorgeous. So we've got to find another way to get that one to market. And then we got a couple of little small girl card games. One is a dance revolution type game. Another one is a rainbow card game, but that's much later. And Listed is our one and only party game. I approached the guys in Sweden because I grew up in Sweden. I speak Swedish, so I said, I wanted to know, what are you guys doing for North America? And they said, well, we'd like to have the game there. So I said, well, let me be your guy. And we negotiated a deal whereby we'll be bringing that to everyone here. So ultimately, Analog Game Studios is a publisher of casual games. So that'd be family games, card games, party games, even gateway-style games. And what we really look for in our games is that they are beautiful, that they really are, they look gorgeous, they look lovely sitting on the shelf or sitting on the table when you're playing them. So we like to go for good artwork in the games.
Now, Jeremy, the Duels of Cartisora, the initial core box that's going to be hitting Kickstarter. It comes with 6 decks. Now, is that? Do you have some other decks that may have that's on the back burner or something in the back of your mind that could lend itself to expansions or additions?
Oh, absolutely. I have 15 different character archetypes loosely planned out.
Wow.
And I did that on purpose before settling on the first 6 because I wanted to get a broad range of brainstormed ideas out there first before settling on anything. And then I have the 6 base characters fully fleshed out and 3 expansion characters already mostly planned out. So I'm ready to start working on the first expansion right after the Kickstarter is over.
Wow. I guess that's where that Excel spreadsheet comes in as far as making sure.
Oh my gosh. I have spreadsheets of spreadsheets.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and then in designing these characters, when I had the archetypes finished and the abilities started to be formed and developed, I could see which abilities worked, which kits don't work, and then kind of cherry picking the best out of what I have of all the characters and combining them into the proper 6 beginner archetypes.
okay.
And one of the expansion characters, actually, the Whirling Dervish, is one of my favorite characters, and I was considering having him and some of his abilities in the base set, but because he's a little more complicated, his mechanics, I think, are more suitable for an expansion set. So the 6 characters are not easy, but easier to pick up on the first playthrough, I guess you could say.
Okay. Well, Jeremy, Richard, thank you so much for being with us this week. And again, it's Duels of Cartisora, and it's going to be hitting Kickstarter on January 31st. Again, we'll put links to all those things in the show notes of this episode, so go check it out. Also, I will be having my... I don't know if I call it a review or a preview. This is a Kickstarter, but a pre-review or something. We'll call it something on my YouTube channel coming up about that time that the Kickstarter is going on.
All right. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Yeah, hey, thanks very much. Listen, we're really excited to be seeking funding to complete the art for the other 4 characters. I know you got to experience 2 of them, but that part is really what we're doing the Kickstarter for, and we're hoping for good backers on that.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I would point out is like the bulk of the design work is it's already done, and you need the Kickstarter to finish up the artwork and the printing production, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, again, I'll have links to those on the show notes. Go check that out. Richard, Jeremy, thank you so much for being on with us, and good luck on a Kickstarter. It's a really good game.
Thanks so much. Till the next podcast. Cheers.
Yes. All righty then. Well, thank you so much for listening in on this episode. You want to join us next week, as my guest will be returning guests. Another returning guest, my goodness. Bob and Ryan Craig with One Day West Games, talking about their new game coming to Kickstarter, Sheep Boomba. And we had we talked about the game, we talked about music, we talked about quite a few other things. So you don't want it was a fun interview, so you don't want to miss that one. So come back next week and listen to that. Again, go to our website, www.themegameeple, and follow us on all the social media stuff there. If you are a game designer yourself and you want to be a guest on the show to talk about your game, there's a contact us page on the website. Just go there, fill out the fields there, and we'll see about getting you scheduled on the episode. Again, if you really like what you hear, just go to our Pod Pledge page or our Patreon page. Regardless of which one you choose, the tiers are identical. So, if you prefer one over the other, just use that one. Like I said, if you're not able to support the show financially. Just spreading the word and tell people about the Mega Meeple really helps out a lot. And appreciate your listenership, the downloads and listenership and subscribers and stuff has really been on the upswing. And in fact, this past 2 weeks, I've almost increased listenership and downloads by about 150%. So thank you all so much. And I could tell that a good portion of that, I'd say maybe at least 30% of people that listen, they actually go back into the archives and listen to some of the older episodes. So I could only assume that those are new listeners, unique listeners that's just now coming onto the show that is actually taking my suggestion and going back and listening to some of the older stuff. So thank you so much with that. Hope you're enjoying the shows. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you will join me again next week. But until then, this is Tom, the Mega Meeple, saying we'll see you at the gaming table.